Hello and welcome to the Mac Gamecast episode 45. I am John Carr as always, and with me is Ted and Casper. How you doing, gents?
Doing well?
Yeah, doing pretty good, thanks.
All right, quick note, we are on a new podcast recording platform. Everything seems to be the same, but if there's any differences, it might be due to that. So we're trying it out. Seems good, but a first time trying it, just figured I'd mention that up front. In case listeners are like, what's going on? It's not the same as it's been the last XYZ episode. Speaking of episode count, I was just thinking this morning, what episode are we on? It's got to be around 44, 45, and it was. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. We're almost up to 50. That's pretty fun, honestly. Mm-hmm. And if we stack what I call the legacy or archive show, which Ted and I were on, and some other guys way back, like 10 years ago or more, longer, I think. I think that got up to episode 35. I still want to post some of those. The best one is the interview with Edwin from Feral.
Yeah.
Which I think was up early on in the show's life, episode 4 or something. Anyway, I keep saying I'll post it, but I do want to select a few of the higher quality ones and post them as like archive show or something. Anyway, that aside, it's just exciting to, numbers are fun. That's all. In one sense, meaningless. In one sense, not. Depends on your point of view. But so what are we talking about today? Probably a lot of tech stuff. Casper and Ted have been watching some Apple Tech Talks. I have not, I'm afraid. So they have some cool comments there. There's some more like
M3. We haven't even had a show since the Apple event that was up.
That's true.
Well, really? Oh, wow.
Well, Sam and I did the Baldur's Gate 3 review, but that was just two of us.
Yeah.
And that was just a pure 100% pure game review.
Yeah. Nothing
else other than I mentioned Feral, something about Feral. I can't remember what it was. Speaking of Feral, they finally announced a release date for Grid Legends 3+ years later, which was wild to me. Casper said it was like 3 years and a few months.
Yeah, I started doubting that actually because I said 3 years and about a month because I figured it was about the same time as the M1 MacBook Air got announced.
Oh,
but okay. I started doubting if they announced it later at Dub the year after. But I don't know. It's at least been quite a while.
It's at least 2 years, if not 3. It started giving me Fable flashbacks. Yeah. Here's the game, and then it's like, where? I can't remember what was the date. December 12th or 6th or something. What did I put?
The 12th, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was the 12th. Yeah. And but mostly just some general tech talk, M3 performance, gaming porting kit up. GPK makes you think ChatGPT, game porting kit updates, and anything else we want in the news. But I've been rambling. Going to turn it over to you guys. What sort of tech talk do you want to start with, or shows or anything? The Apple shows, I mean.
Yeah, so the big deal on the table was that Apple had that event. It's been, a bit now, but they announced the M3, the M3 Pro, and the M3 Max, and the computers that they go into, which... Did they announce a Mac Mini, or was it just the...
I think it was just the iMacs.
Yeah, the iMac and the laptops, yeah. I feel like it's kind of weird that the Mac Mini didn't get an update, given that there's no chip in the Mini series that they didn't refresh, but okay. Makes sense that the Studio didn't get an update, because, then you would have this weird mix of the M3 Max and the M2 Ultra, which would feel weird, right? But weird that the Mac Mini didn't get an update, I feel. But there we go. New chips with ray tracing. So we finally have that on the Mac. Seems to be performing pretty well in the tests I've seen. Some very good Blender scores. Blender is the only thing I really know of that utilizes the ray tracing cores so far. Don't know if you guys know of anything else.
No. Not offhand, no.
No.
Not on the Mac side, anyway.
Yeah, but that's going to come down the road. The hardware comes first and the software comes later, because, it doesn't make sense for hardware or software to exist that can't run on any hardware. But yeah, Blender works, and it seems to run really fast, outperforming by quite a margin the M2 Ultra, in tasks that utilize those ray tracing cores. In tasks that don't, it seems to be very close to the M2 Ultra, but not quite, which is impressive for a chip that's a step down relative to an Ultra chip. This, of course, is the full M3 Max, which upgraded config, more expensive than before as well, with the big Max dice. But then also we get a lower entry point for the MacBook Pro series with the ProMotion display and the new design, not the old Touch Bar one. But still more expensive than if you were to buy a 13-inch MacBook Pro with an M2 chip, but now you get all the niceties of the better display and the new design and the 14-inch display and all that. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, the performance seems good to me. I'm a little bit disappointed with the M3 Pro, given that it's been downgraded in a few aspects. It's obviously still an improvement over M2 Pro, but it's sort of like a side grade improvement in that you're losing some cores, meaning that you win on single-threaded, but the multi-threaded performance is pretty much the same, but then you win on efficiency because it uses less power to complete the same amount of work. GPU, well, you actually lose a bit of performance there because of fewer GPU cores. In some workloads, I should mention, because obviously it has the new features like ray tracing cores that'll win you performance in the workloads that can make use of it. But I've seen testing of, the old horse of the Tomb Raider benchmark where it just doesn't perform as well as the M2 Pro by a few frames per second, right? But still feels weird to have a downgrade in a chip generation. But that's what we're looking at, and yeah, it's cool. I also saw some of the tech talks Apple did where they talked about the underlying technology behind the new GPU architecture, which is the same for the A17 Pro. But they do some really cool things where the memory across the GPU itself, which, I'm talking about the memory inside of the GPU, which is different from the system memory that it can access with your RAM, right? But all the caches of the GPU can now combine, and it doesn't matter if you need more cache for texture memory or more cache for integer operations like holding math values, or if you need more cache for some other part of the GPU pipeline, it can reallocate all of its total cache to where it needs to be dynamically at runtime, which NVIDIA introduced something similar in one of their recent GPU architecture. I forget if it was like Hopper or whichever one it was. But for them, it didn't include what's called the register file, so the most temporary values that can be in math registers at any time. And it seems like Apple has found a way to also get the register file into this shared cache pool, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that's some of the more interesting aspects and takeaways from the architecture of the GPU. Obviously, the GPU will be used in many workloads, and something like video editing will see some benefits, photo editing will see some others, and gaming will see that combination of interesting benefits from it, in particular if they can make use of the ray tracing cores. Yeah, interesting.
Speaking of workloads, you're mentioning a friend of yours who had, I think, the new machine, and he had some pretty impressive results compared to...
Yeah, so I know someone who works at Motion FX, or Motion VFX, I think they're called, which is a company that does plugins for Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, the video editing applications. He works on the rendering pipeline, where they have a product, I think it's called MO2, like oxygen, O to the power 2. And he's working on the next generation of that, O3. He's been running some tests on the M3 Max because he got that from work to work on integrating the new ray tracing hardware with their software suite. And he's very impressed with the performance he's getting. I ran some of his tests on my personal M1 Max with the 24-core GPU at some point. And I forgot the exact number I posted in the chat, but there was some like 6-7 times performance improvements in some cases.
Wow.
That's really stressing the ray tracing hardware. So that's not like an apples to apples, so to speak, performance comparison, because you're comparing the parts of the M1 Max that are just trying to brute force this, and the M3 Max has acceleration blocks specifically for these kind of tasks. But it shows that if you can put them to use, you can really get some good gains, right? So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is interesting. And that's, we've been talking about this for so long, for so many years since the start of the Silicon event. I'm vaguely concerned sometimes listeners will be like, they're just talking about this again, but it's still coming to fruition, which is why it keeps coming up as a talking point. The potential just kind of keeps being uncovered layer by layer, like, I guess like an onion or whatever you want to, a really big apple. If we're just peeling it, we're still not down to the part where you eat yet. We're like, it's coming. or you could get a few nibbles here and there,
Mm-hmm.
a couple games, but like Resident Evil 4 is also coming. I think you posted December 20th.
Yeah.
We'll kind of get into that a little later. This what at least Ted and I find this curious sort of iPhone push, but has this like Mac aside to it that presumably will benefit us anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Basically new machines, great. And I believe your and Sam's conclusion after a lot of chatter back and forth on the Discord was basically for the say someone's listening or now and in the future they're looking to pick up an M3 machine for gaming. They should probably skip the Pro and get a baseline or a Max or an M2 Pro.
I mean, it of course depends on your budget, right?
Let's assume you could take your pick within reason.
If you can make your pick, go for the Max, right? But the Max is more expensive than ever. The jump from Pro to Max, the price gap has increased this generation quite substantially.
Yeah.
And while the Pro chip isn't really that noticeable a jump from the M2 Pros or the M3 Pro, and then kind of the sideway jump in some aspects. Mm. The jump in the M3 Max relative to the M2 Max is substantial, but so is the price jump, right? So if you take price into account, I would say that the base M3 is the best bang for the buck. Especially when you get consider the 14-inch chassis that you can get it in, and that relative to the M2 where you would have to get it in a 13-inch chassis. And again, that also is a price hike, but I would say that's more justified because you get all the benefits of jumping from the 13-inch to the 14-inch. Where going all the way to the Max chip is ludicrously expensive, and I would say in some sense it's better value than the M3 Pro because it also gives you a major performance jump. Then on the other hand, it is ludicrously expensive. And the M3 Pro, while it feels... It sort of has a sour taste to it because of that lag in performance. But on the flip side, it benefits in efficiency. So if you are someone who would like to get a laptop and game without a power supply handy at all times, then I actually think the M3 Pro does offer substantial value over the M2 Pro in that you can probably get an hour or two, maybe even 2.5 hours or something more game time in with it than you could on an M2 Pro. But if you are tossing up in that price range where you want to get a Pro chip and you're not willing to go to a Max and you want the extra beef over the baseline, I might be inclined to suggest looking at the prior generation and seeing if you can get an M2 Max or just a full M2 Pro and save a bit of cash or something.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Apple's website now. I didn't realize how ridiculous they get, especially in the 16-inch. It's like $3,500-$4,000 before you even add maybe some more upgrades. It's like, my lordy.
Yeah, the Max chips are expensive.
I forgot they were that pricey.
Yeah.
That's pretty brutal. Yeah. I feel like also at this point, it's difficult to recommend a machine. Again, assuming, most people who own Apple machines have a fair bit of coin because laptops in particular, because of their, let's say a Pro and above, not the Airs. You get them for like 1,000 or even sub 1,000 with an education discount. Assuming a Pro machine minimum, not exactly cheap. Presumably you're also buying it for some sort of work purpose. You're some kind of professional. But maybe not. Maybe you're just, a gamer guy or gal who happens to have a bunch of coin and doesn't want a PC. That's cool too. But the point I'm getting at is there isn't really enough games, in my opinion, of course I'm biased, to really be here's a great selection. Native games. There's plenty of options
natives,
alternatively through Game Porting Kit, crossover, other shenanigans or related shenanigans. That's a separate conversation. So if you have enough know-how, your options, your menu, let's call it, are probably pretty darn good. You could be playing Cyberpunk or Diablo 4 or God of War or whatever, through these alternative options. But if you're a native person with no know-how, and we don't really know the end game necessarily of the game porting toolkit, by which I mean, I guess it's in crossover now, so that's kind of an end game.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss that a bit further later, but I think there's some interesting aspects to that.
Yeah. So, but we have to assume, this isn't a derogatory term, just the average gamer who isn't really tech savvy, just wants to buy a computer and play, and they either use Steam or the App Store, and that's kind of their limit.
Right.
I do think you're kind of limited. Say you want to get a high-end gaming Mac. Well, you have a bunch of horror options, mostly, with more coming. I guess there's No Man's Sky. I guess Grid is coming if you're a racing fanatic. But like, okay, Baldur's Gate 3, but you can already run that pretty well anyway across the Silicon line.
Yeah.
But like shooters, strategy games, big RPG means action RPGs. Like the kind of action adventure games, the kind of stuff that will typically stress your system, or at least from my point of view, the kind of games I would buy a higher end computer for, because it's like, man, I want this to like, to like feel like I'm getting my money's worth, you know?
Yeah.
Cranking something cool. Currently, we don't have that, in my opinion.
Right. But I do think like the recommendations I gave before for configurations, that was based on a gaming use case. But let's be real. If your main use case here is gaming, you absolutely want a Mac for whatever reason. Get a baseline and put the rest of the money into a console or a PC or something, right?
Okay, thank you.
But I mean, like, realistically, right?
Decision.
Realistically speaking, right? If the only use case is that, and you want a Mac, that's the best bang for your buck, economically speaking.
Right.
If you want a powerful Mac because you want a powerful Mac, and you also want to play games on it, fantastic. There's a lot of great options out there, including what I mentioned before. The M3 Max is superb. The M3 Pro makes sense for mixed use cases where you're doing things that will use the CPU. You're doing things that might use the GPU aside from gaming as well, but maybe the GPU is just for gaming, but you want a better CPU than the baseline for other tasks or whatever. Perfect. You want a Mac because you want a luxury experience for other computing needs. Fantastic. But if it's just for gaming, the Max chip just economically doesn't make sense, right? In any situation, if it's just for gaming. I don't think, personally at least. You know, unless you're swimming in money, in which case, go for the boat, right? Go whatever you want.
No, it really is not. It's above and beyond Apple's typical luxury price. It's reaching like, holy moly, you really got coin to burn. You know, I typically cap out like somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 on a Mac, like historically speaking. And you know, I don't know what, you know, I still have a M1 Pro, which suits me just fine. As you all know, I have a gaming PC, so of course, I haven't been gaming much anyway. I've been playing lots of board games instead. And lately, I've been on the computer and Tabletop Simulator playtesting board games through Tabletop Simulator. So some guy. So
that's also on the laptop side. Everything I've said so far, right? The landscape is different on the desktop, and you could get any of the M chips significantly cheaper on a desktop. But then, of course, you also don't get those fantastic mini LED displays with promotion. You don't get the built-in speakers, the battery, all the jazz that comes with that. But you will get a significantly lower entry point to something like an M3 Max, you know, not existing yet, but will come eventually, in a studio or a mini or whatever, right? A Pro or whichever chip.
Yeah, depending on what kind of games you play. And once again, this is so subjective. You know, what kind of gamer are you? We've even talked about this long ago, probably years ago. It goes beyond just your preferences of genre, like what genre game you want to play. Well, what settings are you willing to play a game at? What resolution? What FPS? What low, medium, high, ultra graphical settings, and so on? What frame rate's acceptable to you? Like, if you don't know if you don't have an answer to any of those questions, then you probably don't care and don't really need to think about it. If you're happy to just boot up a game and play it, then go grab an M3 iMac. You know, or they're not too expensive. They have a nice 24-inch screen. They're a solid, like, depending on your point of view, low to medium entry machine. And it supports ray tracing with the M3, you know, hey, not bad at all. Pretty solid.
On the CPU side of things, I think the M3 is a fantastic chip that, you know, bordering on even high end, I would say.
Yes.
For the kind of devices it's into, right? You know, I'm not saying high end for a workstation, but for the type of devices. On the GPU side, it's more low to mid than high end.
But that's what I was really referring to, kind of its raw gaming power, as it were. So, you know, all that has to be considered or not, depending on your point of view when, you know, upgrading a machine, buying a new machine, someone else asking you, hey, I want to, you know, play some new games on my Mac. What should I do? Because you're a gamer guy or gal and you know what you're talking about. Well, maybe you do or you don't, but these kinds of things are relevant. What will you be satisfied with? Will you be happy at XYZ performance level? And somewhat like the excellent Andrew Zai, if I'm saying that correctly, has all these cool videos. I don't know how often he releases them, other than fairly often. With like testing games through Game Porting Kit or natively if they're native and stuff like that on the new hardware. So he's a great YouTube resource if you want to be like, well, what will an M1 or M2 or M3, whatever insert level here, run XYZ game? We'll go peek at his channel. Maybe there's other channels too. But
just a quick comment on that, actually, because I saw one of his recent videos where he tested games on the M3 Max.
Yeah.
And so there's a fairly new open source project called MSync, which is a new way of emulating Windows' way of waiting on certain things to be ready on Mac specifically. Because Wine, which crossover, Game Porting Toolkit, they're both based on Wine. What Wine has natively is like two mechanisms for emulating Windows in that aspect. One, just the Wine one, and then one called eSync. And MSync is a new implementation of this specifically for Mac that will significantly improve CPU performance on things that rely on waiting for certain things to be ready, which is something you fairly recently or fairly frequently need in game-relating situations where you might like perform some computations and then the CPU needs to wait for some things to be ready, done by the GPU or by another CPU core, synchronize and then continue execution or something, right?
Yeah.
And in the case of Cyberpunk 2077, switching from eSync, which was already improved over the standard Wine implementation of this synchronization primitive, to MSync, increased performance on the M3 Max from 36 frames per second on the tested settings to 80.
Holy moly.
Pretty substantial. This is only going to do anything for situations where you are CPU limited. If you're GPU limited, it does nothing. But in my testing, in most situations where you're using something like Game Porting Toolkit, you are CPU limited, not GPU limited.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
The bottleneck. Huh. How about that? Yeah, it's the landscape's so weird to me, as a historically, a lifelong Mac gamer, former game journalist for a number of years. And, the old guard is basically all but gone,
Yeah.
Even Farrell is like on life support. Like a couple of years later, there's like beep, something on the radar. You're like, oh my God, they're not dead, we're in a coma or whatever. And a lot of stuff seems to be third party or Apple sponsored, although the ports on those have been really good. The Resident Evil stuff and No Man's Sky, as far as I understand. Like running really well on Silicon hardware. Lies of P as well, from what I've heard, runs really well. I forgot about that. Lies. I knew there was something else in the back of my head. CD Projekt just updated The Witcher 1 and 2 to run on Silicon machines. Really cool. I played those games way back in the day on PC and Mac both, because I've played them multiple times. The Mac performance was always pretty janky, so nice to know it's been updated. Hopefully less buggy and weird. Great games, though. I mean, some people don't like The Witcher 1's combat style. It's a little odd, but I still think it's fun. Witcher 2 is still pretty impressive, honestly, because for its time, I think in 2011 even, it would like melt your PC. Barely handle it. It was like the next Crisis or whatever. So it actually holds up pretty darn well graphically, even like 12, 13 years later. It's like, this game's pretty good looking. Like, it doesn't look as old as it is what I mean. Yeah, I'm a Cyberpunk fanatic, so till like Cyberpunk's on Mac in some way or the other, I'm like, I feel like that'll really legitimize the platform. I don't know why, but that's how I feel about it. I mean, it is one of the most common like tests and videos people are putting out on YouTube. Cyberpunk, or Diablo, which makes sense. They're popular games, but I just find that kind of funny. Oh, sorry. The point I was getting at, didn't mean to ramble as I do. Because previously some in-house ports were weird, although I guess I'm really thinking of something like, oh my goodness, Borderlands 3 from several years ago from Gearbox. Yeah, that one, and also a lot of EA ones were always a bit... Yeah, so like, it's here, but it's a little janky, a little squirrely. And of course, the question always becomes, behind the scenes, does this app seemingly Apple or alleged Apple sponsorship, does that have a limit? Are they just going to keep doing it? Will it catch on? I know we do have, what's his name? Hideo Kojima promising to bring his feature games to Mac, which currently we just know is Death Stranding 2, but who knows what other oddball project he'll come up with. So once again, it's all good. To me, it's not yet great, but it certainly looks great down the line. Like, I'm more curious, okay, what will happen next year now that this new hardware here, ray tracing here, the library is slowly building. A couple more things are releasing this December, coming soon. Okay, great. Grid and No Man's Sky, and I forget what else. Oh, dang it. I think I forgot. I didn't say, I don't know if it's here. I had made a list of games I didn't even realize had come to Mac, but I don't know where I put it. And there were a couple things that I believe we hadn't mentioned.
I mean, one I hadn't heard of at all, but that Apple mentioned in the M3 release was Firmament or something like that.
Yes, that was on my list.
I hadn't heard of that one. But,
okay.
Darn it, I'm not seeing it saved. Oh, was it a sticky note instead of a text file? Sorry, guys.
Yeah, but like things are happening, but
they are. But like yeah. Sorry, Ted, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, having been, into this for so long, it's like remembering the days years ago where there was lots of games, and now it's petered down. It's nice to see it coming back up again, but it's a slow process, and I don't know how much patience a lot of people have, and I'm just afraid that not enough people are going to stick behind the Mac, and just jump over. So,
yeah. I mean, it's certainly not the Apple II days of games, but nothing is going to be
well, yeah, but even in the, the later days of the Mac, once I had a friend once who, he's been my friend since ever, and he had kids, he had a lot of kids. And he always made a joke that his kids didn't know anything about colors because he always had Macs. Back in the day, they were monochrome, right?
Yeah.
And, finally, his last kid was born when the Mac finally went into colors.
Nice.
It was just, but back in those days when the Mac went to colors, and the computers were, pretty decent. There were so many games, and now it's like, it's petered off to almost nothing.
But I always do think it's funny because like at the days of the Apple II and the 2GS and all that, it seemed like there were more games on the Apple computer of the day than there were the other platforms almost.
Oh,
right?
yeah, definitely back in those days. There was, and shareware was a huge thing. People were writing stuff left and center, and, for a few bucks, there's some really excellent games out there, and other things too, other software, but, yeah, it's kind of petered out, but there's a few people sticking with it, and that's a good thing. So,
yeah, it's really interesting. I'm more looking. I feel like we've really established the silicon. What do you call it? Foundation at this point. The market penetration, whatever the word is, saturation. That's what I was looking for.
Okay,
seems pretty strong. Obviously, Apple's making a gaming push. Games are coming out. New, pretty juicy hardware is here with the M3. Ray tracing support finally here for the first time on Mac. It's been on phones a while, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, the iPhone 15 Pro was the first with ray tracing, and that was just September, so it's not been.
Okay, for some reason. Okay, what I was thinking of was a one of those Apple tech talks from years ago where they were. I think it was like a demonstration. It was like Metal
has had concepts of ray tracing for a while and acceleration structures and stuff, but it's not been properly hardware accelerated. It's just been that you've been able to inform Metal that you were doing ray tracing, and it's been able to do slightly accelerated paths through the compute pipeline, but it's not been hardware acceleration. But if you wrote your Metal code with those ray tracing fundamental principles in your Metal shader, then it'll automatically work with the shader cores of the M3 and the A17 Pro. So.
Speaking of that, okay, I think we covered that. Yeah. Okay, I can't recall if did we talk about Assassin's Creed Mirage last time? I thought we did.
Sort of. We talked about it was coming to iPhone, but I don't know if we said that it's confirmed to have a Mac release.
Does it have a confirmed Mac release? I can't remember.
I think I read that somewhere, but now I'm getting doubtful.
You were talking something about the Apple event and the phones and the best way to bring it to the iPhone is bring it to Mac. Maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, Apple has done a few developer-oriented tech talks since the announcement of the M3 series. One of those being where I mentioned they dove into the GPU architecture, but another one was called Bring Your High-End Game to iPhone or something to that effect. And like one of the pretty early things they said in that tech talk was if you're planning on bringing your high-end game to iPhone, the first thing we recommend is bring it to the Mac. The reason they gave was something to the effect of, you already have something that works on a certain performance tier, let's say PC or whatever. And we have something like Game Porting Toolkit and a lot of tools that will allow you to pretty quickly get something up and running on the Mac, which will set you off on a course where you can develop something and you actually have something to look at to see what goes wrong, instead of coding blindly and going, well, it still doesn't compile, I'll change a million lines of code and then I'll finally, I got a black screen, I don't know what's happening. And then if they start trying to do all this on the iPhone and then they finally get something running and then it's like, well, it's running at 2 FPS because we don't know what to scale and stuff. But if they develop on the Mac, then they have a starting point where they have something that runs at a decent frame rate, and then they can from there bring that directly to the iPhone and then figure out what to scale down and these sort of things to get it to work. But the takeaway was that Apple told these game developers, step one, bring it to the Mac.
Right.
Which, indicates that they might be looking at the strategy that we've discussed in this podcast a few times, where the popularity of the iPhone is a way of getting interest from game developers to also port to the Apple platform as a whole, getting more games to the Mac to get the market share of the iPhone because, well, it runs there, so it also runs here.
Yeah, I think if that really takes off, to me, that becomes that's the, well, let's just call it current final. That would be like the current conclusion. That could really start a wave of cool stuff. Assassin's Creed Mirage, I happen to play Valhalla on the PC. It features a character, sort of a prequel to a side character in that game, Basim or something. It was reasonably well rated on PC. Not the best Assassin's Creed ever, but not bad. But, to me, a big game like that, once again, kind of legitimizes the platform. It's a big IP that's super popular. And it is in and of itself, it's a cool game. That's not just another horror racing game, which we're kind of spammed with. No offense to horror and racing fans. It's just not my jam. I have fun demoing those games, but I don't love to just like play them back to back.
But I also can't help but think this, right? So Apple's push here is clearly that the iPhone has a massive market share. You know, incentivize developers with the massive market share of the iPhone, get games on Apple platform as a whole. But with that said, is there really, and like the iPhone market is huge, but is the iPhone AAA gaming market huge? I don't think so. Right. Because like all of us here are like, well, I wouldn't want to play that on a phone. Right. Furthermore, like the high-end games like Assassin's Creed Mirage, Apple has already said that's limited to the iPhone 15 Pro and the iPads with the M1 chip and above and shit. So you're not going to be able to run it on even the like iPhone 15 non-Pro, just the brand new iPhone 15 won't run Assassin's Creed Mirage. So I don't know.
Yeah, I checked on a release date really quick. So no Mac confirmation, but it's coming to the iPhone 15 Pro in 2024, quote unquote.
Okay.
So not even confirmed what quarter, just 2024.
Right, okay. Then I read something else that said something to the effect of a lot of the iPhone games being confirmed to come on Mac, but I guess not that one. Maybe that was just the Resident Evil 4 thing or something, but yeah.
The Resident Evil 4 was confirmed, so that is coming. But once again, by association, it would be very surprising if they put all the effort to put out like a proper AAA iPhone Pro 15 Pro port and not have a Mac version. It's like, what? Why not? Like,
right.
Yeah. To me, it would be odd, maybe not from like an indie developer, but from these like major heavy hitter publishers. It's like, you can't spare the little, I don't know how, I was going to say little extra effort. I don't know if that's true. Let's just call it the extra effort. But I can't imagine it's like an enormous, insane amount of extra effort.
But I also find it funny that someone like Feral, they're doing a remake of Hitman Blood Money. Have you seen that?
No, really.
But they're doing a remake of Hitman Blood Money for iPhone, Android, and Nintendo Switch.
Oh, maybe I did.
Full stop. No
Yeah,
PC, Mac, anything. Just
Wow.
I find it such a weird platform selection, right? Everyone loved Hitman Blood Money, and you're remaking it, but only for mobile devices? Why?
That's odd. That is odd. So right, you were just saying before, because this is relevant, none of us here want to play AAA games on an iPhone. That's true. So, but Apple or whoever, Tech Media, seems to be kind of pushing the iPhone 15 Pro, maybe it's just Apple, as this kind of, game console, sort of a Switch or Steam Deck kind of thing you could plug in or hook up to a bigger screen and then use the controller or whatever, to play the game that way. So you're still playing on a phone, but it's in a more console/computery type, console type setup. I mean, wasn't there some concerns about overheating or length of time playing, or do you have any thoughts?
I've heard concerns of that, but Apple has actually directly addressed that to the developer community. So within iOS 17 and Xcode, whatever, 15 or either 15.1 or one of the new Xcode releases, there's a new flag that you can set during development that will pre-throttle your test device. So when you push your latest game build to the iPhone 15 Pro that you're testing on, it will already, at the moment the game launches, throttle the CPU and the GPU to the performance tier that they will be able to sustain indefinitely, such that you can test with the performance that you will have after having run the game for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, however long it takes to reach heat capacity, right? You can turn that off and go like, oh, wow, my game runs at 1 million frames per second. And then after 30 minutes, you'll reach that wall where it just tanks. But now developers will be able to test that without needing to play for 30 minutes before realizing, oh, my game actually runs significantly worse than I expected. So Apple is aware of the heating thing, and they are addressing it for developers. But they also want to keep it in such a way that if you are doing short burst tasks and not sustained gaming, then you can actually benefit from, your photo being ready to export in 30 seconds, so it never throttles. You can just run the high performance tier.
Right.
So, yeah.
So yeah, in that sense, could be very interesting if that's more their attempted market, or their pitch for AAA gaming on the iPhone is iPhone 15 Pro or the iPhone Pro, insert X number here, 16, 17, and so on in the future.
The problem I see with it is that you're still again, the iPhone market is huge, but if I need to buy 15 accessories to plug it into my TV, get a game controller, I don't know, I need to be conscious of it when I scroll through the App Store. Like, will this work best with a controller? Will it work well with a touchscreen when I'm on the go? Will it support being cast to a TV versus just the phone and all that? It's not an integrated, smooth experience as it would be with a Switch or a Steam Deck, where the purpose of the device is this gaming experience, and all of the peripherals around it and the software that runs it is built for that purpose.
Right.
The market keeps shrinking when you add all these requirements to the experience, the peripherals, the software experience, and all that, right?
It's true. It's true.
I'm not convinced on it.
The harder it is. I'm not convinced either. I'm just trying to think, what's the most optimistic outcome?
I can definitely see good experiences being had this way, where you plug it into a TV, you have controllers, maybe you have those clamps controllers that attach to either side of the phone when you're on the go, like a Switch experience or something. I can see good experiences being had in this environment, but there's just so many constraints on it. Yeah.
It's true. It really is. So, absolute best course is, of course, they can do whatever they want with the iPhones as long as the game gets to Mac, Fine by me.
But we're also still in this weird situation, right, where when I buy a game on the iPhone App Store, I can also play it on my iPad, but not on my Mac, right? Even if the game is available on all three platforms. The App Stores on the iPad and the iPhone are intrinsically linked, but the Mac is just completely separate to that bubble still. And if Apple really wants this world, they need to tie that all together again. But on the flip side of that, games are often significantly more expensive on the Mac App Stores, so it gets complicated in that sense as well, right?
Yes, correct. But no, some kind of I don't know how to solve that. Whether you offer two options on the same page, like Mac version or whatever, or they offer some kind of Steam Play type idea where buy once, play anywhere. But then how do you account for that pricing? I don't know. But I agree, it needs to be smoother. There's a lot of bumps in the road if they are going to push this route, and not maybe the Mac route, or if they really are going to push the App Store route and kind of leave Steam aside. Something would need to change there, hopefully. Anyway,
But like the storefront situation, problem, whatever you want to call it, I think is a major hurdle, probably as much as the games is. Because like Apple has had these massive disputes with Epic, and if Epic could close down the Epic store at any point. I don't think they will, because they want to make money. They're a corporation. They don't care about the lawsuit if they can make money off of Apple users. But you want to stay on good terms with the store owners, right? Even if not in the case of like being on good terms with the Unreal team or whichever team, as long as you are on good terms with the Epic Store people. You want to be on good terms with Valve, who, they want to push their own thing. They want to push the adoption of the Linux Steam boxes and all that. And they have a big market on Windows, but the Mac market is presently maybe not that big to them. And then Apple is pushing the App Store, and they might be like, well, why should we cooperate with you? But we have all these games already and you don't. And then you have like places like I mentioned before, EA being a bit less than ideal in their Mac porting a lot of the time. Well, on Windows, they've switched away from Origin ages ago into this EA app thing. And on the Mac, when you go to the download page for the EA app, they still go like, well, you can still get Origin. Well, thank you. But that's like the old thing you've got, and you've moved away from that ages ago. And I guess you're just not going to offer the EA app ever on Mac, and you're just going to like maintain us on this live support system where we can play the games we already own, but we're locked out of future support or something. I don't know. Like the storefront problem, I think is a major one, because you want choice in the market, and there's a lot of games that are gonna only exist on one storefront over others for either exclusivity reasons, which seems to be a big deal in the gaming industry, but also just there's players like, I assume all of us here, who already own a bunch of games on any of these storefronts, and we don't want to lose, Mac support for the storefront as a whole and lose access to all the games we already have on the Mac. And we like not just losing support entirely, but getting neglected and getting, versions that don't support a million features that become relevant on the other platforms or whatever, right? It's,
yeah. Agreed. No, it's a battle, We have talked about storefronts before, but it's more looming now that more of these games are poised to start arriving, and almost, as far as I know, the vast majority are just on the App Store. I think Liza
and I think Apple needs to be careful there.
Something like that. There's a small amount who are like on both, but most of them are.
Yeah, I was a bit happily surprised when I saw that Lies of P at least were allowed to be both on the App Store and Steam, because I thought that might be exclusive as well. But I think Apple needs to be careful there, because the more they push App Store exclusivity, the more they might push the storefront owners like Epic and Valve and CD Projekt Red with GOG and stuff away from the platform, fearing that Apple is going to make it more of a walled garden than other PC gamers have often portrayed the Mac as being, that I've not particularly thought to be true in the past. But if Apple keeps pushing for exclusivity of the Mac App Store, and not just like timed exclusivity, but indefinite exclusivity, that could become something to push the store owners away.
Right. Interesting point. Yeah, because all the Epic stuff is timed 6 to 12 months, and then it comes out wherever else it comes out, Steam typically, and GOG and whatever it might be. Yeah, it's funny. Thankfully, a few platforms have kind of died off. Microsoft Store, although I think it still exists. Maybe it doesn't. I forget.
I think Windows it still exists, but nobody uses it.
Origin, which is now EA app. Then you still have all these third-party launchers like the Rockstar one, and I don't know, whoever, Ubisoft, Connect, I think it's called. And yeah, it's definitely a real soup out there, because everyone wants their own thing. Kind of like the streaming wars. Suddenly everyone has their own streaming service, and so all this stuff. Like you said, to a certain extent, the options are healthy, but then when they become so like bloated and ridiculous, it, in my opinion, becomes like detrimental to the gamer. I feel like we're at slight bloat at this moment, and wouldn't mind a little trimming, but I can't also begrudge companies the desire to make more money and have their own advertising, whatever you want to call it, like their brand front and center and stuff.
I hate when you get these weird situations where you buy your game on Steam, and then when you hit launch, it opens the EA app or whatever and goes right, now I'm logging you in here, so I'm actually the one who has the game for you. but you bought it and downloaded it on Steam, but what you downloaded was the EA app launcher that knows that you've got the game because Steam it's a mess. I hate that.
Yeah, you got to set up an account on one of the other services, right? Exactly. Yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah.
I think there's some game that has 3 layers. I forget which one it is.
Right.
It was, that was it. It was the latest Modern Warfare 3. It actually doesn't have its own executable. So it goes through Steam, I think maybe some other launcher. Then you launch into Modern Warfare 2, and then you sidestep over into Modern Warfare 3. But when you do that, it quits Modern Warfare 2 back to desktop, then launches Modern Warfare 3, and like reloads everything, and then puts you in the game. Gamers are like, oh, like that Jackie Chan meme or something. Like,
wow.
Like, hold their brains exploding, you know.
That's
maybe they
terrible.
fixed it by now, but that's how it was on launch. It was just like, who does this? What clown programmed this? You know, it's just like.
I mean, I recently downloaded Mirror's Edge and Mirror's Edge Catalyst because they were on massive sales. Like I got them both for like €2 or something, incredibly low. And like I wanted to try if either of them could run through the game porting toolkit, and I figured Catalyst was the best shot because, well, it actually runs on a modern version of DirectX, and Game Porting Toolkit doesn't support DirectX 9, which the original one was. And I tried to open it, and the step that fails is not running the game, it's opening the EA app. Yeah, fantastic.
Actually, great games, though, if you like parkour. I played them.
Yeah, I'll boot into Windows at some point and play them on Boot Camp.
They're a good time. Yeah,
also got Frostpunk on the autumn sale, which has a Mac version. I'm looking forward to trying that.
It does. Great game. I've played it a couple of runs of it. Really, pretty cool, pretty intense.
Nice.
Also has a board game.
Nice.
Fun fact. So the conclusion is, as ever, there is a lot of potential, a lot of promise. More and more of that is realized month by month, year by year. There's definitely a lot of challenges in the road ahead to Mac gaming. Some of them have no clear, or let's say no obvious solutions. A lot of it, I think, is also how will the market respond, the Mac gaming market, the iPhone market. How will Apple keep responding? How will game developers keep responding? It's all also linked together, you know, in kind of a what do you call it? I don't know the word. Symbiotic relationship kind of a thing. So we can only make our best guesses, you know, at these things. But
that's actually an excellent segue into the license changes for Game Porting Toolkit. Yeah. So early on in the life of Game Porting Toolkit, Apple's license prohibited use of Game Porting Toolkit with outside of the explicit use of bringing a game natively to Mac as a developer, right? Then later on, they loosened the license a bit, made it allowed for companies like Codeweavers to integrate Game Porting Toolkit into emulation layers to play your games directly that way. I still believe the license prohibited directly bundling it as the product itself, like putting it in a game and releasing that. But you could release a product with the explicit intent of using Windows software like Codeweavers does and stuff, right?
Right.
That was one way Apple went a bit. Maybe it's okay if not every game is native, but there's just a nice ecosystem that'll allow you to play things even if it's not the perfect experience. It's better to have an experience, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now there's been an even further developing towards this. It's better that it exists than that, you know, we have a smaller amount of perfection than a larger amount of okay, which is even before Apple released Game Porting Toolkit 1.1 to the developer community, Codeweavers had already released Game Porting Toolkit 1.1 in a beta version of Crossover, which means that they clearly talked to Apple in a more secretive sense and get access to Game Porting Toolkit before everyone else now, which I find very interesting given that in the beginning, Codeweavers was a little bit, I don't know, they seemed disappointed that Apple was using Crossover without even informing them that they were going to use the Crossover engine to power parts of Game Porting Toolkit. Obviously, Apple built a lot on top of it, but that they used a lot of the core open source software that Codeweavers had made, and they didn't even acknowledge it pretty much aside from what they were legally required to. And now they seem to actually have a pretty decent partnership where they get access to it before the developers get access to the toolkit, even though it's still a developer tool.
Right. Yeah, I'm on the Codeweavers website. Their emails are always really enthusiastic about the gaming stuff.
Yeah.
Because I get their emails. Their website, at least up front, does not make that particularly obvious. You got to kind of dig to they don't. Well, maybe it's a I don't know if it's a legal thing. Like, I'm not seeing banners like "Play Cyberpunk, Diablo 4." Yada, yada. Their emails say that, but their website, you have to dig several pages in.
Yeah, I don't know, but if you Google the right thing, the Google link into the Codeweavers website will say something like "Play games on Mac with crossover" or something like that.
Yeah.
So they definitely do market it, but yeah, the front page or the pages on the website can be a bit hidden with that marketing message sometimes.
Tiny bit.
It's a bit weird. Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know if I'm understanding this correctly. Do you see a world where Apple, kind of like the old Cider days, just releases stuff with this game porting toolkit? Just kind of
I still don't think Apple wants products, and I still don't think it's part of the license. Though I must admit I haven't read it in any detail level at all. I've just heard this from people, but I still believe it's prohibited from the license to ship a product, a game or whatever, that is powered exclusively by Game Porting Toolkit. It's only allowed to do things like
testing,
or products like crossover, where the product itself is to play things. Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, I was just going to say with crossover, it's not just gaming. It can do, Mm-hmm. I mean, you can use it for a lot of other things. So
exactly.
Yeah.
But I still don't think Apple wants a future where you buy a Mac game and it's running through Game Porting Toolkit.
Right.
But I do think they want a future where you can buy and play the Mac games that exist, and if you want to play a game that doesn't exist, then there is a sort of higher than present level of community knowledge that it might be possible through products like crossover with Game Porting Toolkit or whatever. And I think Apple wants to be part of contributing to that we might get sort of a semi-Proton-like experience on Mac with the Steam integration. I don't think they'll fully get to the point where Steam is fully integrated with all of this or anything. But I think Apple does see that it worked sort of well for Linux to have this Proton layer, and that a lot of games are playable on the Steam Deck pretty well, even when they don't run natively. And I think they see some success in that they could capitalize on. And as you've said before, right, Cyberpunk running on the Mac sort of legitimizes it in your eyes. And if through crossover, they can show the world that you can run Cyberpunk at ultra settings 1440p with the M3 Max and get plus 80 frames per second all the time, even through the translation layer. I think they see some marketing value in that and want to contribute to that existing.
Right. That would be cool. I think that's kind of all I had for general topics, some tech talk, some, let's just call it the market analysis. By market, I mean the Mac gaming market ecosystem is the better word. Some scattered game announcements. If you're a horror fan, or a Resident Evil fan, then, well, they seem committed to just keep pumping those out, both on the PC and coming to the Mac side. So that's cool. And the future of, the the storefront platforms, to me, that's almost a bigger battle. I agree with Casper. Games will come inevitably, one way or the other, but where will they be sold and how can you access them? That's the real question. Yeah.
But also, to a point we've made earlier, with the timeline of everything, we talked about how it might seem like we've been talking about this stuff for ages and it's just coming to fruition and all that stuff. But if you look at the hardware features versus the software features that exist on the Mac right now, Apple has announced that they'll, before the end of the month, sometime early next week, release Final Cut 10.7. And this is a video editing. It doesn't relate to gaming, but it's sort of tangentially related. Final Cut 10.7 will finally make use of more than one of the media engines on the M series of chips. Now, all the way back when they announced the M3 Max, they were and it has 2 media engines. And the M1 Ultra had 4 media engines and all this stuff, right? Where the M3 or the M1 and the M1 Pro only had 1 media engine. And the media engines on the Pro and Max chips are bigger. But anyway, it's not until now that Final Cut can actually make use of more than one media engine. But it's all the way back to the M1 Max that they put 2 media engines in there.
Interesting.
So clearly there's like quite a timeline from when they implement a feature in the hardware to when the software starts rolling in. And this is just like a media engine, right? Using more than one media engine. I'm not saying it's a trivial task, but relative to implementing a full game on Apple Silicon, it's easier, right? To parallelize this task and split it across the media engines. At least I would imagine so, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good example of potential timelines, potential possibility, tangentially related, as you said. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
The game dev. Yeah, to me, it's mostly what's next year's announcements. Again, Grid's coming, Grid Legends, Resident Evil 4. I think that's kind of it, at least for AAA games for this year that I know of.
I would so love to talk to Farrell and know if anything went wrong in the development of Grid Legends that caused all of this, or if they were always just planning on a timeline that seemed significantly longer than what everyone thought.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be close to them. Haven't in a while, but might be able to grab someone. Might at least be able to get a text if we couldn't get a podcast interview, I'd probably be up for an email one. We could.
Definitely try for it. That could be super interesting to hear some thoughts on.
I have their PR contact. So at least the last was a lady. Last I checked, may have changed by now. That's less relevant. But if we couldn't get someone on directly, which would be nice. Obviously, they have their front-facing PR. They can only say so much, but could be very interesting if they could. I was going to say spilt beans. That's probably too strong a word, but provide some more context or information would be interesting for sure. I'm going to make a note that I can at least ask. Can't hurt to ask.
Right.
Ask Farrell about Grid Legends development? ? All right.
It would also be cool to hear what their thoughts on their future role in the Mac ecosystem for games is. But I imagine that's something where they would be maybe less responsive than something as concrete as what was the timeline for that.
probably, because, there's always obviously two things. When I was a journalist, you get a relationship, they'll tell you things off the record. And of course, you have to respect that. And then, of course, what's on the record could be something completely different because it's the entire company's, statement, policy, whatever. Yeah. Aspire had the same thing. So I'm not close enough with them anymore to get the inside scoop like I used to, but might be able to get something interesting. It's worth a poke, see what happens. But I actually like that question because I think it's really relevant. I think, what do you say? What is their position?
Yeah, role or position or whatever. Yeah,
essentially. Even if they, there could just be a a typical answer like, we love the Mac and we'll keep bringing the games that make sense. I'm paraphrasing. Might just be the answer, but maybe there is a more interesting answer. Like, we're pivoting more to mobile because that's the bigger market and it just makes sense for us.
If you look at what they've been releasing, they have been broadening the scope to Nintendo Switch, Android, iPhone, all these things, right? Yeah. But they've still been releasing Mac games, and I'm interested to know if they see it as a broadening of the scope exclusively, or if it's more of a change of direction, right? Right. As well as something like, now they're bringing Grid Legends to the Mac, even if they can't tell us what. Do they have more projects in the pipeline, or are they just sort of we're working on all Hitman, Blood Money Reprisal. We're working on Nintendo Switch. Do they have more Mac-specific things in the pipeline, even if they can't tell us what? Or is it just the other platforms for now? Or how is the relationship with Apple? Do they foresee future sponsorships from Apple's side if Grid Legends was fully sponsored or partially sponsored by Apple? Or is it more for that was a one-time thing and then other things will be direct with the publishers or whatever? But yeah, interesting in any case.
I forgot they had... Total War of Pharaoh did come out.
There's that too, yeah. There's the Total War series.
I mean, it kind of tanked on the market side, but it did come out for Mac nonetheless. So I'm looking at their radar. Oh, it's just all the known stuff. It's Hitman Blood Money twice, because one's Switch and one's mobile, and then it's Grid Legends. So nothing unknown on their radar, but there's stuff. no, they're not dead. I poke fun at them, but it's out of love. Like, they are my favorite company. And
I
they
love
put
Feral.
out some of my best like gaming memories on the Mac, bar none. So, or gaming in general, even, honestly. So it's like, if anyone thinks I'm being mean to them or unreasonable, it's like I have just a lot of love for them in my heart.
Yeah, I mean, if we should be mean to anyone, it's Aspire, who abandoned us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, sort of it's not necessarily an update, but we talked about Aspire before and the Knights of the Old Republic remake. And it was confirmed they got yanked off the project and it was given to someone else. Yeah. And I think it might have even been given to someone else after that. Last I heard, whoever's in charge of it said, like, don't ask me about it because I have nothing to say. He got like annoyed in some interview. So it's not just Aspire's presumable fault, whatever they did wrong in the project. The project itself was like not canned, but all but it's been put on like indefinite hold, which probably means it's canned, but could come back. Mm-hmm. They just disappeared into the bigger corporate, like a giant ooze slime, like got absorbed. Some terrible D&D campaign gone wrong. Whoever bought them, Saber Interactive, then someone else bought Saber, and on and on. There's this whole what is it, like Russian doll thing, like buy, like bigger or smaller to bigger.
Yeah. Like the emails you get from them, it's just like, sale on a game we released 1 million years ago. Also, we know that the iPhone exists or whatever. Like there's not been Mac news from Aspire for 1 million years, and I don't think there ever will be again.
No, I'm not going to hold my breath. Once again, a lot of love for what they did in the past. Respect. I wish they went out with a bang instead of a whimper, and I can't even call it a whimper. Really, they just kind of ghosted us. Not cool.
Was the last thing they did was that like Civilization 6 or something?
Civ, they released some theme park tycoon simulator nonsense. I can't stand it. It was a 2016
tycoon thing.
Yes. It was a 2016 PC game. They ported in 2020 something, 2021.
Right.
It was random as heck. It just popped up because I still get their press emails as well. I'm like, what the hell is this? I was like, Aspire, new game, tycoon. I'm like, I kind of pride myself on knowing most games on the market. I'm like, what even is this game? I had to Google it. I'm like,
when I saw that email, I thought it was an old game that they were just having a sale on again or something. I didn't realize it was a new thing.
Yeah. I really wish they went out with a bang, put out some cool new game, or newer game of some type, even if it was their last one, like a last hurrah, like would have been like, respect, ta-da! Instead, they just like, where'd they go? The John Travolta meme from Pulp Fiction. He's like looking around, like, huh? What? Like, what happened? So yeah. Anyway, Feral's chugging along, or okay, I said they're on life support. Specifically for Mac Games, it's a little awkward, but they are producing other things, so they are alive, just not.
Yeah, you see activity from them all the time. They're
doing their activity, absolutely. It's just not always in the area I would prefer, which is to the Mac. But
but unlike unlike Aspire, who even when they have activity, you're often sitting there like, well, this doesn't seem to be Apple related at all. You just made a blog post that didn't say anything. Feral, even when it can take a while between Mac related things, well, they will pop up with a new Total War or the Grid Legends thing or whatever. It happens with semi-regularity still, even if it's not something, completely, whoa, we're surprising everyone with Shadow of War Middle-earth, like when they did that or something, but they just go like, well, we are continuing the series we've already invested in, like Total War or whatever. So they still publish things all the time that relate to the Mac, even if it's not something entirely new and exciting. Or I shouldn't say new and exciting, because Total War games, for the people who care about them, can be new and exciting, but
they do really put in the effort. They have blog posts. They put up mini sites for the games, with like FAQ and extras and cool features and like little GIFs and videos. And they put in the effort. Like when they put out a release, they do put in the effort. They've always done that. I got to give it to them. Like it's nice.
And they put out like little YouTube videos with trailers that explicitly say like coming to Mac and all these things.
Exactly. They have their own store even you can buy from them, which as far as I know is a Steam version, but they would get more money. So if you're going to buy on Steam, might as well buy from them. It's cool. I think the last thing I bought from them was the second Tomb Raider game, the rebooted one, Rise of the Tomb Raider maybe. But But yeah, a lot of love to Feral. Hopefully, their next gaming release is in like 2 to 3 years after Grid Legends. Or okay, once again, Total War Pharaoh, even if bombed, I'm sure somebody loved it. But to me, that's like a mini Total War, not like a Total War 3, which is like a major Warhammer Total War 3, which is like a major Total War release. Hopefully kind of something. And Grid Legends is a major racing game, and I believe it's very well reviewed on the PC and console and whatever. So super cool. I would just, I'm hoping for something bigger from them maybe end of next year or next summer. I don't know. I probably not, but a guy can dream.
I can dream.
Yes, we can all dream. That's kind of
the Mac gaming mantra.
Yeah. Just rename ourselves, rebrand, like the Mac. I don't know, the Mac Gaming Dream Podcast or something. I don't know.
No, I mean, sometimes the dreams come true, but yeah,
they do. No, it's not all hope is lost. Even though we're kind of poking fun at things, there's very interesting things happening. Like we said, more games are coming. No doubt next year, more announcements will happen. To me, it's the big question mark. Well, what announcements will happen? Which PC games from which studio, which dev or Apple or blah blah blah. And they do seem to be speeding up their releases a little bit, like Resident Evil Village to RE4, and maybe, we'll see an AC Mirage. Like, the gap is shortening on these, like, PC, maybe Apple-sponsored things. They seem to be coming out a little quicker each year, which to me is promising as well. So that's interesting. Maybe we'll see, like, that slow build-up year over year. 1 release, 2 release, 3 release, 4 release in a calendar year, whatever,
Yeah, and then as I mentioned on the timeline front, it's not until now that Final Cut is getting full support for even the M1 Max and stuff. So things can take a while to really kick in.
That's true.
Yeah.
Definitely true.
So basically, cross your fingers, keep an eye out on the blogs, the news, the podcasts, the YouTubes, and see where it goes. And whatever happens, we'll be there to comment on it and hopefully have fun and have a good time with it.
Yeah.
As we do. So thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for showing up, Ted and Casper. Lily and Sam could not be here. They were on Discord, but not here. I'll say hi for them on their behalf. I think Lily's off. What'd she say? Freezing her butt in the woods or something.
So same old.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.